Council, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? I see no conflict. Moving on to approval of the council minutes, and I'll start with the ones held on, the meeting held on August 27th this year. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Thiessen. All in favor? And that's carried. Then there are the minutes of the special council meeting, and that one was held on August 15th. Moved by Councillor Wilkinson, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that's carried. Was there any business arising out of those minutes? I see nothing. So then we'll move on to public meeting for drainage, and we'll start with the engineer's report regarding the McCracken drain and the improvements to the tile portions. Luann and Gerard.
We're asking tonight that the report provided by Root Engineering dated August 15th, 2019 for the repairs and improvements to the upper part of the McCracken drain pursuant to the provisions of Section 78 of the Drainage Act be adopted, and that Council authorize that if the project should be tendered, that the said tenders come in within the engineer's estimate of $338,000, that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to award the tender. Administration received requests to clean or repair the McCracken drain as it has been backed up and caused flooding in addition to recent occurrences of large sinkholes. The McCracken drain upper part consists of a 2- and 3-barrel pipe system which commences east of Highway 77 with 2 enclosed drains traveling generally in a easterly direction. The drain then consists of 3 enclosed drains eventually draining into 2 enclosed drains once again along the north side of Mercia Road 6. These parallel drain systems eventually drain into one single enclosed drain. After several attempts to repair the drain, the superintendent recommended that the entire upper portion of the drain should be reviewed by an engineer. Council then appointed Root Engineering in 2016 to prepare the report. The site meeting was held and noted any concerns and possible replacement of the upper end of the old covered portion of the drain. Attempts to flush the pipe have been unsuccessful. Mr. Root noted that based on his detailed survey, investigation, examination, and discussion with the affected owners and governing authority, he would recommend that the new covered pipe system be constructed as part of the McCracken drain. The new drain will be installed at a location and to the general parameters established within his design drawings attached to the report. Mr. Root is here to answer any of your technical questions that you may have. In the meantime, the financial impact section, we do talk about that it's been approved in the budget for 2019 at a cost of $675,000. At that time the budget was created, the design was incomplete. Therefore, only an estimate could have been given at the time. Now that the project has been fully designed, the engineer estimated for the project is $402,000, including construction. We do note at this time that any lands that are farm tax classed will be entitled to the ADIP 1/3 grant as well. So again, if you do have any questions for Gerard, he is here to answer them.
Thank you, Luann. Council, are there any questions? Councillor Thiessen?
Just a question, did any of the landowners have any issues with this? I got to think that if we're getting rid of a bunch of pipes and putting into one, it's got to be better. Were there any on-site issues?
No, other than we've spoke to a few landowners, both during the process and tonight. There's a few landowners in attendance, and overall the consensus is they want this project to proceed.
Did anyone want to speak to it of those property owners or the applicant? Doesn't look like it. Moved in by council. Did you want to speak to it?
Oh, come up to the mic. Come up to the mic.
Why don't you come up to the mic and then everyone can hear? But that's okay, but we want to know who you are and where you live.
Hi, I'm Ken Stasko, one of the landowners, and we had a good meeting back here with Luann, and she answered our questions, and we seem to be in agreement with everything right now.
Great, thank you. So then it's you made a motion, Counselor Teasdale, and seconded by Counselor Hammond. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the second public meeting with regards to drainage, and that will be the Judson Morse drain, the lower portion improvements, and the enclosure to that drain. Again, we'll turn this over to you, Luann and Haida.
We're asking council tonight to adopt the report provided by NJ Peralta Engineering dated August 1st, 2009 for the improvements to the Judson Morris lower portion. We're also asking council that if the project is tendered and should the said tenders be within the estimate of $322,000, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign those tenders. Administration received a request from the owner of parcel 53204 and 53205 to enclose portions of the Judson Morris drain to accommodate redevelopment and expansion of his existing greenhouse operation. Mr. Peralta noted in his report that based on a detailed survey and discussions with the affected landowners and governing authorities, he would recommend that the existing lower portion of the Judson Morris drain be enclosed between two stations. The enclosed portion would be connected at the east end to Bridge 1 and the west end of Bridge 2. He further recommended that Bridge 3 be completely removed and that the lower portion of the Judson Morris drain be enclosed at the east end of Bridge 2. The total length of the enclosure, including the existing retained access bridge, consists of approximately 122.8 meters of corrugated steel pipe arch that is intended to convey flows up to the 1 in 100-year storm event. With the overall proposal enclosed, reducing the overall open drain storage capacity available within the lower portion of the drain, compensation for this loss of storage shall be included as part of the overall improvements. Mr. Peralta's report identifies widening of the open drain upstream of the proposed enclosure. This section has suffered a considerable amount of erosion, and therefore the drain slopes will be lined with erosion protection. Mr. Peralta is also here if you have any technical questions. When we get into the financial impact section, we did have the project estimated at a cost of $150,000, but again, at that time, the design was incomplete, and there was changes made in the design after that. So now the design work has been completed, and the engineer's estimate for the project is $388,000. This will result in an estimate variance of $237,000. So this project is 100% assessed to this landowner. He will be paying all the cost, and there will be a portion that may be grantable because he is greenhouse farmland. There is no municipal cost to this project either. If you have any questions for Tony Peralta, he is here to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you, Luann. Council, do you have any technical questions? See none. Does the applicant want to speak at all? No? Okay. Welcome.
I will advise that the applicant has signed a waiver to release his rights to appeal to the Court of Revision. Because this process has taken so long, there has been quite a bit of a review with MOE that he would like to get it constructed as soon as possible. So we did receive a waiver. So at the Court of Revision, it'll be kind of a null and void type thing, but we still have to go through the process. And we are closing the tender this Friday in hopes that we can construct this year.
Okay, that's great. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. So, Luann, we're moving on to the Hooker Drain. The engineer's report.
Yes, we're asking that council receive and adopt the engineer's report for the change in assessment to the Hooker Drain, Highway 77 West Branch, prepared by Baird AE with the date of June 4th, 2019. This is the parcel at the southwest corner of Mercier Road 8 and Highway 77. You will recall a recent development being built on that site. Once they were done construction, they decided to build a house on this property, so we are just adjusting the site plan approval and the drainage into the Hooker Drain slightly. So this report just corrects that assessment for the new outlet. We're asking council adopt it, and the area will be reduced from 0.55 hectares to 0.04 hectares. And that all costs are assessed to the owners of 636 Mercia Road 8, and there is no adjustment to the municipal cost.
Okay, great, thanks, Luann. Council, are there questions, technical or otherwise? See none? I think we still need a motion, yes. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dunn. If there are no comments or questions, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Luann. And now we're moving on to the Leamington Visitor Information Services Report. James Cox, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of Council. So the purpose of my report tonight is twofold. The first is to seek Council's endorsement for a new multi-channel model for visitor information services to be implemented next year in 2020. And the second is to update Council on the findings of the condition and structural assessment of the existing Tomato visitor information booth. And also recommend that, based on those findings, that the area surrounding the Big Tomato be transitioned into a multi-purpose public space, that the existing structure be removed, and that the new public space includes a reimagined and reconstructed Big Tomato as a public art piece. So as background, the Big Tomato, or the Tomato Visitor Information Booth, to give it its more formal title, was originally constructed in 1961 and has been used as a visitor information booth since that time. The structure is owned by the municipality, as is the property. Visitor information has traditionally been provided by volunteers organized by the Leamington District Chamber of Commerce. The Tomato itself is a plaster structure which is constructed over an existing wooden frame. As Council is aware, upon opening the information booth for the 2019 season, it was discovered that the structure had deteriorated into a considerable state of disrepair since its closure in the previous fall, to the extent that it could not safely be staffed for this tourist season. It was discovered there was a significant amount of black mold throughout the structure, and the exterior plaster had deteriorated considerably. In addition, the doors and windows of the structure were not sealing properly, which was exacerbating and contributing to the decay of the overall structure. So as a result, the municipality and the Chamber of Commerce jointly closed the visitor information booth for this year, and the municipality retained R.C. Spencer Associates to conduct a condition assessment on the structure and provide recommendations and cost estimates regarding potential repairs or the future use of the structure. And the full assessment from R.C. Spencer Associates is attached to my report for reference. During this time, the municipality has taken the opportunity to reassess the provision of visitor information services for Leamington to make sure that we're being as effective as we can be in providing information and welcoming people to our community. The current model for these services has served us well over many years. But it was created before the municipality had a dedicated tourism office, which has, the creation of this office has considerably increased the municipality's capacity to engage with tourism-related products, engage our visitors, and work with our tourism businesses to help them develop new experiences and be more prepared to welcome visitors themselves. Before I get into our findings, I would like to acknowledge the work of our culture and tourism developer, Kira Knapp, for her substantial amount of work in compiling this research on visitor models and designing the new model for visitor information services that I am going to be recommending in my report tonight. So the full research report that was put together is attached to my staff report for review. But in summary, it concludes that the way that visitors have been accessing information in recent years has changed considerably, primarily driven by advances in technology, the ubiquity of technology, and changes in travel habits. To summarize the report very briefly, it essentially finds that visitors are no longer seeking out information from centralized locations as their primary source of information when they're traveling. They're much more likely to use technology that they may have or seek local recommendations both in person or online. So if you think about if you were to go stay in a community somewhere, if you were going to be a tourist in a community, you're more likely, I would say in this day and age, if you're looking for a place to eat, you would take out your smartphone and you'd call up TripAdvisor and you look at what's around locally and get information that way from other users that have been there themselves, other tourists. Or you would go to the person at the front desk of your hotel, who is presumably a local, and ask them for recommendations where they would like to eat. Visitors these days they're not looking to just receive information, they're looking to be engaged about what is present within a community, what sorts of experiences they have. And so that has shifted the way that people are accessing visitor information. The research also shows that visitor services, in order to be effective, really need to be proactive in engaging visitors. We can't just passively wait for people to come to us and seek out information. We have to be proactive in marketing the experiences that our community has to offer and actively engaging with visitors. So this means using both the methods that they wish to be engaged with, online resources, and that sort of thing, but also being present at the locations where visitors already are. We can't wait for them to come to us. We have to seek them out where they're staying, where they're visiting, and make sure that they can get the information they need to fully experience our community and to understand the tourism experience that our community offers. Because if we just wait for them to come to us, we're going to lose our access to a lot of the visitors that come into our community. Point Peewee National Park itself brings over 400,000 visitors annually, and rather than trying to direct those people to come into Leamington so that we can tell them what's going on in Leamington, we have to be present where those people are to help make that connection. And so, with this research in mind, we are proposing replacing a centralized tourism information booth with a multi-channel, decentralized model for visitor information services. So, as I said, this model will seek to proactively engage visitors where they naturally congregate and also in the manner that they wish to be engaged. So there are three main elements to this model. The first element is to introduce a system of decentralized self-serve tourism information kiosks throughout the municipality. And there are different types of those that we're proposing a mix of them. Foremost among these would be standalone kiosks, which would allow visitors to access visitor information through a digital database. These sorts of kiosks have become quite common in recent years. You may have seen something similar in provincial tourism centers. Essentially, it's a standalone kiosk that effectively has a tablet in it. Someone can go up and access a database of experiences that are available here. If they're looking for restaurant recommendations or a hotel listing or looking for a specific service, that information is there and it would be programmed by the municipality. And our tourism office works quite closely with our tourism businesses to help them develop these experiences. And so that information would be being fed directly into our visitor information kiosks. We've been in touch with TWEPI about developing this system. They have some experience with this, and we'd be looking to partner with both them and Ontario's Southwest as we move forward. As I said, this model is becoming more widespread in recent years, and so there's a lot of expertise out there through other tourism organizations that we would be looking to tap into to ensure that we're putting forward the best product that we possibly can. So these digital kiosks would be installed at key tourism points throughout the municipality, such as perhaps the Leamington Marina, or most certainly in partnership with Point Peewee National Park to have one actually in the park itself. This would be something we'd be looking to develop as we move forward. We're proposing to start out with a relatively limited deployment of these so that we can see how they go, gather some information, and then if they prove successful, we can roll them out more fully in the coming years. We'd also been looking to procure a mobile information kiosk that could be deployed to events that our staff attend, so things like Hogs for Hospice, some of the other third-party events that we are attracting down to the Seacliff Amphitheater, or even if it's a particularly busy day down at the Seacliff Beach in the summer, we can have a mobile kiosk there where people can come and access print materials, speak to one of our staff or speak to a volunteer and get some information that way and recommendations that way. The final element of this would be a series of smaller standardized information racks for sort of key print materials, the special events guide that the municipality puts out, materials from our partners or tourism businesses that would be curated by the municipality, maintained by the municipality, but these racks would be installed at, again, key tourism businesses throughout the community, such as restaurants, hotels, that sort of thing. The second element that we're proposing as part of this model is a system of, or a program of ambassador training for our tourism businesses. Because we are decentralizing that model, our model of visitor information services, we need to make sure that the staff at our tourism businesses who are usually the first point of contact for visitors to our community, that they have consistent training about what's going on within the community, that they're familiar with our events, they're familiar with our attractions in the community, they're familiar with the experiences that are available in the community. As most of the employees at these businesses are Leamington residents, they may not necessarily be familiar with some of these more tourist-focused things that are going on within the community. Not everyone who lives in a community has the opportunity to experience it as a tourist. So we would be looking to develop a system of training for employees at these companies. It would primarily take the format of a familiarization tour or a FAM tour, where we would take staff out for a half-day or day-long session and take them around the municipality, tour them around tourism businesses, inform them about what's going on within the community. However, we also recognize that tourism businesses tend to have a reasonable amount of turnover in their staff, so instead of just relying on one day for a familiarization tour, we'll also be developing resources that we can provide to our tourism businesses, a video outlining what the tourism program for the year are, print materials, training materials, so that our businesses have these resources for their staff if they're bringing on new staff mid-season. And of course, our tourism office would be available to help our businesses out if they're bringing on staff and if they're looking for additional support throughout the year. The final element of the model would be an increased focus on our online resources. We're just in the process right now of redesigning our On the 42 tourism website, as was advanced through the budget this year. We want to ensure that people can easily access the most up-to-date possible information through our tourism website, that is the single point of contact that everyone online is going through. But this also involves helping our tourism partners, helping our tourism businesses make the most out of the online tools that are available to them. So this means sitting down and working with them to ensure that they are what's referred to as in the study of tourism as being market ready. So making sure that their website's accessible, making sure that people can find them online, that they can find them on social media, that the information that tourists are looking for is easily available on a business's online presence. So there's an element that we're putting out this information, but also an element of working directly with our businesses to ensure that they're taking advantage of the tools that are available for them. So I've included some, some preliminary information about the overall structure and costs of this new model in my report. Really what we're looking for tonight is Council's endorsement to develop this new model of visitor information services and develop an implementation strategy for 2020. Our plan is to advance the funds to implement the new program through the regular 2020 budget process. However, I should also note that as this project really provides us the opportunity to modernize service delivery, it might be an ideal consideration for the use of the one-time modernization funding that was made available from the Provincial Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing that was announced in late March. Administration is currently reviewing options for the optimal use of this funding, and will be bringing a report back to council with recommendations for this in the future. So the second section of my report deals with the future of the existing tomato information booth and the surrounding space. So the new model of visitor information services, if endorsed, would no longer require the maintenance of a central visitor information booth. As a result, this report would recommend ceasing the operation of the Big Tomato as a visitor information booth and repurposing the surrounding area. So the structural and condition assessment from R.C. Spencer Associates is included in my report for your review. In summary, it finds that as there is a significant amount of black mold throughout the structure, and that although the underlying wooden structure, the underlying wooden frame of the structure appears to be in relatively good condition, the tomato would effectively have to be completely rebuilt if it were to be remediated. It would effectively have to be skinned, the plaster would have to be removed, and it would have to be rebuilt on the frame itself. The estimated cost for remediating the existing structure would be a minimum of $15,000, with the note that there is the likely potential for overruns on this cost depending on the type of mold that was found in the structure. There was not an analysis done on that yet, so it is likely, as these things go, that those costs could escalate. There's also the fact that the structure is now 58 years old. I would suggest well beyond the anticipated life expectancy of the original structure, so you're going to see escalating maintenance costs associated with that. Relocation of the existing structure also carries additional costs, and there is the potential for complete structural failure, that the tomato would be damaged beyond repair should the underlying concrete slab crack during transport. So the R.C. Spencer Associates report recommends demolishing the existing structure and constructing a replacement tomato using modern materials as the most cost-efficient option. If the tomato in the surrounding site is no longer used for tourist information, it presents the municipality with an opportunity to reconfigure and reimagine what could be done on that site. The site where the tomato currently sits serves as one of the entranceways to Uptown Leamington. There's a potential to reconfigure the site to serve as a multi-purpose public space, an anchor to the redesigned Mill Street, which we've been using very successfully as an event space during our Mill Street markets, and a gateway to the Uptown. In addition, the site is immediately to the west of the Leamington Arts Center, and there's the potential for the space to be used for events held at the Arts Center or a potential future expansion to the Arts Center building. The Arts Center has been identified as one of the 3 pillars of Uptown Leamington, along with the newly refurbished library and Bank Theatre, and configuring the site at the corner of Talbot and Mill Streets and reimagining how that could be used would give the municipality a great deal of flexibility when looking at the future of this remaining pillar to our Uptown. So in this light, administration is recommending that a landscape architect be retained to create a design for the reconfiguration of the current site of the Big Tomato. There would be no action taken on the existing structure until the design is brought back to council for review and approval. Out of recognition of the Big Tomato's status as an icon of Leamington, we're also recommending that the new designs for the site incorporate a reimagined and redesigned Big Tomato as a public art piece to ensure that that landmark remains. So full details on the new visitor information services model and the results of the structural and condition assessment report for the Big Tomato are included in your package, and at this point I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, James. Council, I would say if you have technical questions now for James, we'll do that, and then we'll have the delegation, Wendy Parsons and Jen Dawson up to speak, and then we can engage in debate after that if that suits you, or stating our opinions. Does that work? Does anyone have a technical question for James or clarification of any of his report? I see none, so then we'll ask our delegation to come up. We'll need your names and your addresses, if you don't mind, ladies. Yep, and turn on the the talk button. Please, yes, name and your address, full name and address.
Jennifer Dawson, 648 Sterling Line, Wheatley, Ontario, the president of the Chamber of Commerce.
And Wendy Parsons, 19 Rogers Street, Leamington, Ontario, and I am the general manager at the Leamington Chamber, Leamington District Chamber.
Good evening, Mayor, Madam Mayor, and Deputy Mayor, and Council and Administration. We're just really glad to be here to provide our opinion, support, and findings of that our board discussed in this most important aspect of Leamington and tourism. So, as well reported in the report, the Leamington District Chamber of Commerce has historically provided tourism services through that tomato location, managing a group of dedicated tourism ambassadors. And, we had a good discussion today about the vision and the future model that is being presented here tonight is very comprehensive, and I think it meets many of the needs that moving forward that the Chamber of Commerce would really, get support behind, because we all have a stake in tourism services, throughout the community. One of the challenges that we had, so we were, on board right in the beginning. We fully supported the closing of the tomato at the beginning of the season for health and safety reasons, and obviously reported in the report, a good move. And then throughout the summer, obviously, we had commitments to some volunteers, our summer students, our ambassadors and our summer students, and our business owners. So, time goes by very quickly. So we found it a little challenging to be able to provide meaningful feedback and information to them over that course of the time, how, what part we were playing in delivery of tourism services, and, when were we going to get information. Now, saying that, we had we got the report, we were given we had a good meeting with James on Friday, and we were given enough information that Wendy and I were able to hold a pretty productive board meeting this morning with the Chamber Board to discuss, really, as quickly as we could, how we felt about the recommendations in the report. So overwhelmingly, I think the Chamber supports this recommendation of the kiosks and the recommendation of developing a more comprehensive visitor tourism information system. But we really are we're really engaged in building bridges as part of what part do we play as the Chamber. Are we a passive role? Are we an active role in the future state? So we're looking forward to being a part of those discussions. And as part of these menus, you may not know, but we are currently embarking on a strategic business plan. And of course, this is a big topic of ours. It played a big part of our business previous, so it's kind of expedited the conversation a little bit for us, but we are actively looking to see where the town is going to go with this, and if this recommendation is put forward, we can obviously develop our strategy as well and complement that and support that in any way. I can't think of anything else.
That's good to hear. Wendy, did you want to speak to it at all, or is that for both of you?
Sorry. I just, on my part, I just wish we would have had a bit more contact. Like from the beginning, we were told we were going to be kind of included in the discussions, and we had zero discussions. We received the report when the council received their report on the tomato. I had many ambassadors come in over the summer. We did try to make contact, and we did not receive anything. So we were just a little disappointed on that aspect.
Okay, that's fair and duly noted. So, council, do you have questions for either of the ladies from the Chamber of Commerce? We'll start with you, Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you. And welcome, ladies, Jen and Wendy. A question that come to mind as you were giving your summations, Jen, is that what is the Chamber's thoughts about the existing tomato? You talked about supporting the idea of kiosks. I know I hate to put you on the line, but I mean, the Chamber obviously has had discussions about that. And what are your thoughts moving forward with what we do with the existing building and the site that it sits on?
I think, given the opportunity that we had to talk about it over the summer, but more robustly today, I think I could, feel very confident to say that I think we all feel that the visible presence of the tomato in some form in that uptown area is important, and our business members would feel strongly about that. We did not form an opinion per se about whether we should, save the existing structure, relocate it, but I think the recommendation of, in some sort of way, saving that visual representation, I think is important. I don't know, do you have anything to add to that?
Just from the social media aspect alone, you're going to have a big discussion with many community members, businesses in the town about the big tomato. I don't know the construction of it or anything, but I think we need to have something of the same size and at the same location or in that proximity.
If I may, Your Worship, thank you, ladies, because I'm glad to hear that that's the thoughts of the Chamber, because they are mine as well. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. And thank you, ladies, for coming tonight. I'm just wondering if you could share with the people following along the numbers of people that attended the Tomato, let's say, in 2018, the last time that was open for a full season. That would kind of give people an idea how we're coming, basing our decisions here on how many actually attended the Tomato booth versus the numbers that we see here online. Would you have that information for us?
Yes, I know. I didn't know this was going to happen, but we had 1,500 people sign the visitor's book. However, not everybody signs the book, and when we do the counting at the Chamber, we count the one person in the party, not a party of 3 or a party of 10. We just count one. The ambassadors were very personal in giving their information. Maybe something's in season, so they would, somebody's looking for a certain thing on their phone, and it's just down the street, but the visitor couldn't figure it out. So there's just different one-on-one. So it was great. I know technology is going forward, but you still have old people like myself who use the the books, and I use social media, but I also use the delivery of I get books delivered, and maybe it's because that's what I've done for so many years, but I do visit tourism places when I go to a town as well. So.
Sure, thank you. I think it's worthwhile noting that the report here says that there was 22,844 website visitors, and I'd like to ask James, how long has that been recording? That 22,844, what time span is that?
So the statistics that are included in the report are for 2018. So that would be the time span from January of 2018 to end of year of last year. We are on track to surpass these numbers for this year. The tourism website has presently seen about 25,000 unique website visitors for the year thus far. So that's up until where we're at now in September. And we have seen a consistent increase in our online usage of our online tourism resources since we launched the onThe42.com portal in 2017.
And if you don't mind, would you explain to me what a unique visitor is to the website? You got 17,000 of them. I don't know what that term means.
So unique visitors are differentiated from repeat visitors. So if we see 5 visits to a website, all from the same IP address, we assume that's the same person visiting our website 5 times.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, have you down next?
Thank you, worthy mayor. I guess, I don't know who I'm going to ask this to, Peter or James, or will there be any PICS, public information center meetings on this? Or are we just we're going ahead with no public information, design, you just give them an option to let off steam before they start typing away? I don't know. I was just thinking about that.
Thank you. I'm going to give you some information to try and help answer that. Just yesterday, the Minister Scott announced the opening of the Community Culture and Recreation Stream Funding Program. And what that program is for is especially for cultural centers and recreational centers that improve the quality of life for residents of a given municipality. So one of the things that we have been talking about is that space to the west of the Art Center. And what we've talked about, and well, Chad's here, Chad and I have had a couple of discussions as well about the potential for adding on to the Art Center in the same way that we added on to the library and heading west, because that's the space that we have. So I raise that because that's the sort of thing that administration has been talking about, that perhaps what would be best is if tonight, if the commitment is that we're not going to use the Tomato as a visitor information center, that administration can go away and get some, obtain some diagrams, some sketching, some renderings, thank you. Obtain some renderings, not just for the Tomato, but knowing that if that is council's direction, that it would incorporate some artwork that would represent or honor the history of the Tomato within Leamington, that would be incorporated into the renderings that would be part of the Art Center, that space, and the Tomato. Those sorts of things, then we would be able to get, as we did with the library, we'd have public information centers to comment on those concepts. There may be other ideas about where that Tomato, if this is the direction that council wants to go, there may be other places in town that may be more appropriate to have a piece of artwork like that. But at least at this instance, that administration be given a chance to obtain some renderings that include both the Art Center, that area west of the Art Center, and potential for public art that includes the honoring of the Tomato.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you. I agree with the direction that, or the recommendation for the direction of the visitor information, going more online and social media, that sort of thing. I can't remember the last time that when we were traveling, we actually visited an information booth. When it comes to the Tomato, I too agree that I'd like to see it remain where it is. I think too, probably it needs to be reconstructed. But I would like to see what happens with the Art Center, with the landscaping around there. I would like to see if it could be incorporated into there. And would it, I guess the question then goes to, would it remain in place until such time as the decision was made as to what happens to that area?
Yes, in fact, I think that the report did indicate that nothing would happen until we come back to council to show potential renderings or some concepts going forward.
Councillor Dunn.
To you, Madam Mayor. My thoughts are upgrading the tourism information and being allowed it, I think it's a great idea. We need to modernize, and it's been working with the tourism department. I love the idea of revamping that area, but I do like the heritage behind that tomato. I like that old tomato. We have a few pieces in our community that have been refurbished, and the Bank Theater, Worms Jewelry, that are little icons that sort of install our heritage. And I know it may only be 58 years, but still, it has a bit of heritage when it comes to the greenhouses and everything else, and I think that having that stay as it is what I think I would support.
Sorry, Councillor Hammond.
I know who you're talking to. Thank you, Worship. You know, I guess we're at the point in discussions that we're given opinions. And I too believe that, and when Wendy talks about age, I've got you by a couple of years, Wendy, so, but moving forward, yeah, and I think we need to move into a new era where, you know, roving kiosks are the way to go. James pointed out very clearly that when you talk about the visitors to Point Pelee, some 400,000, it doesn't make sense to have them go there and then come back for information about the town. Let's give it out there, so that makes sense. And in the training of those ambassadors, and hopefully people from the chamber will man those kiosks when we put them out. But now I want to talk about the tomato. You know, Councillor Dunn brought up a point about the Worms Jewelry too. Let's talk a little bit about the building next to the tomato. When some here won't remember, when it was the post office many years ago, and a council long before our time decided that rather than tear that building down, they were going to preserve it, and they did. And we've repurposed it now into a beautiful art center, and thank God that they did. And I think that tomato enhances the art center to the point that you know, it is art in itself. I think that having the tomato there, and to Councillor Thiessen's point, he tries to visit some of the locations where they do have visitor centers. I think that tomato there, being the artistic draw that it is, will bring people to the art center. And if you have a kiosk inside the art center where pamphlets and information can be handed out, even more so. And when in the report that James, and by the way, it was a great report, James, you talked about having the original dimensions of that tomato, and one of the options that were given were to make it the same size, same dimensions, and that's what I would like to see. Obviously, we can't fix the old one, but we can sure build a new one. And I think that this town, and the history of this town, was based on the tomato. That's what Heinz's was started with, and that's what I think I'd like to see moving forward. That tomato on that site.
Since everybody's had their say, I guess it's time for me. I'll talk a little bit about the evolution of tourism. Wendy, I remember when you started way back when, and tourism was a matter of, as I said earlier today, businesses in the core kicked their door open in the morning and served customers all day and kicked their doors shut at night. And during the 1990s, until actually till 9/11, we had a very successful tourist time with our friends from the South. For me, that's when I had my business. For me, at that time, the summer was a second Christmas season. And then 9/11 happened, and tourism took a huge hit. And the evolution of tourism began from that point on, I believe. Things started to change. It became much more fiercely competitive, fighting for that tourism dollar because it was being held back by people. People were tending to stay home. And so that began. And I think with lots of foresight and big picture thinking, the municipality decided that they needed to be a part of that picture. For a whole bunch of reasons, selling yourself, economic development, and all that kind of thing. And with that, we started to build a department, and very talented and trained people. And I believe that that was the beginning of a slightly higher, I don't know if scope's the right word, but a higher level. We set the bar became set a little higher. Started also, as in the report, when James said, when number 3 was the gateway to Niagara Falls, 401 changed a lot of that. Prior to that, those kinds of places were definitely where tourists went. You didn't have a phone, a cell phone. You didn't have a personal device. There was no other way to get information but to have it, the hard copy in your hand. And then that all changed. And with that also became more of a sophistication level required. And I think that's when maybe we left you in the dust. I think the training of the ambassadors could have been a little more severe, the vetting of the ambassadors. We had incidents where we were basically supplementing with tourism dollars from Leamington and had ambassadors sending people to Kingsville. And we started to get a bit of, we weren't satisfied with that level. And I think that's where some of that started, and that's when we realized we had to grow our own, if you will. We had to develop our own. And I think that along with the times, that showed that we needed to be different. So we have raised that bar. And I went back and I looked into the budget, and we would give you anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000, but in your budget, you didn't show that money being used for tourism. And there also became a disconnect. So if we left you in the dust, it wasn't really intentional. It seemed that we were carrying the load perhaps more than we thought. So when we give $20,000 and less than $2,000 is used for tourism, and it's manned by volunteers who aren't vetted and aren't specifically trained, that level of service was not what the municipality was about, and hence the need for the change. And I think it's a good change. I think it's what the current customer also requires. Like, think about current customers. They're much more demanding. They have a higher level, and that's not a negative, a higher level of expectation. And that old model had not changed. Wasn't a bad model, it just hadn't changed. But the needs and the requirements have, and that's why we have the department that we have. So it's not to say anything bad, it's just saying that we've moved on. The model needs to be different. And then I will go back, then I want to talk about the tomato for a few minutes. I agree too that we shouldn't have our model there. I like what James has. I don't, if these kiosks are manned by volunteers, they have to be trained volunteers. They can't be negative volunteers. They can't be argumentative volunteers. We have to train them to be good ambassadors of Leamington. Not ambassadors of going to eat in Kingsville. I'm sorry, it's not acceptable on our dime. We need to train them about all the restaurants and all the things that are here. It's just a new day. When we have businesses that sometimes we who live here don't know, but our people who work with these businesses do. So there again, we need to have a training model for everyone. And if someone doesn't fit into that model, even though they're nice people, they may not fit. So we're just raising the bar. As for the tomato itself, first of all, I don't believe in a public information session on choosing the kind of or look of the tomato. I believe that's what we're elected for. That's why we're here. We represent the people. When we take it to the public, God bless the public, they've put me here. But I also know the weeds that we can get into and the social media. As you said, Wendy, I'm not having social media arguments about this. I refuse to do this. We're elected to make those decisions. So I will totally speak against a public information center for that final decision. the day after the tomato was closed, I received my first phone call from a very affluent local corporation, more than willing to get behind and put the dollars into it. And since then, I've received 2 more phone calls. I believe that that dollar figure doesn't even have to come from the taxpayer. I think that we can get corporations who are engaged and invested in our community who are dying to do this. And yeah, you know what? Maybe we'll keep that old look, but what the heck? This is 2019. Do we need a model from 1960? I'm going to say let's be open. Let's be open to what the possibilities are. Let's get into the new millennium. Let's see what marketing people and branding people, what they can come up with. And again, those companies that have offered that, let them come up with some ideas after we give them the groundwork or the basic ideas. Let them pay for it if they're willing to do that and put their little logo in small print on the side of that tomato. I'm all for it. So to me, this is all an evolution. Look at Mill Street. Our Mill Street of 2019 is not the Mill Street of 1972 or 1960 or 1950. And quite frankly, maybe we are getting older, but heck, Wendy, we're good models. We're models of this day. So we need to change everything around us with the times. We can't be stuck in 1950. We don't buy like we did in 1950. We don't dance like we did in 1950. We don't shop. We don't do anything like back then. We need to be current. We need to look current. And I know we have people that love that look, but we also have to think about the future and the people that we want to attract 30 years from now. We need to think about the people that are coming along with their young families that want to stand in front of that tomato and get their pictures taken. We need to think about that. I believe absolutely, yes, we need a tomato. Do we need that 1960s tomato? I'm not that sure. We need to remember our history. We need to acknowledge it, but we don't have to stay in the past. We need to be in the future. We need to be in the present, and we need to think about the future. So for me, yes, change the tourism model because it's a new day. Keep the tomato because it's our history, but update the look. Be open to updating the look. We're not deciding that tonight, but I think we need to be open to updating the look. We do want to be partners with the Chamber. We appreciate everything that you have done. None of what I've said is negative about anything. It's just a new day, and we want to work in a partnership with you because it has worked well. And that to me is also about building bridges and going into the future together, just as long as you understand where we as council are standing. Thank you. So, council. I'm sorry I got on my soapbox. Well, not that sorry. Anyway, our decision is about the tourism model. It's also about, well, I guess there's 4 more points. Well, let's talk about the first one. So the first recommendation is that council approve a model for multi-channel visitor information services focused on ambassador training, community visitor kiosks, and online resources to be implemented in 2020. And that's moved by Councillor Hammond and seconded by Councillor Dunn. Anyone want to speak to that? All in favor? And that's carried. So then the second one, do you want me to go through those other? So council directed administration to discontinue the use of the Tomato Visitor Information Booth as a center for visitor information services. Moved by Councillor Thiessen, seconded by Councillor Hammond. Comments, questions? All in favor? And that's carried. Number 3 is receive the attached structural and condition assessment of the Tomato Visitor Information Booth that was prepared by R.C. Spencer and Associates. Moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. And all in favor of that? I'm doing these individually. I hope that's okay. And then last, council direct administration to transition the tomato visitor information booth to a public art installation by demolishing the existing structure and redesigning the surrounding area as a multipurpose public space, including a reimagined and reconstructed Big Tomato. Comments, questions, alternative? Tell me where you want to go. Councillor Hammond.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Just along with that, and I think Peter already had noted that the existing tomato will stay where it is now until such times as we have come up with a transitional plan.
Do you like the wording of the recommendation? Yes, Mr. Neufeld.
Can I suggest that we just modify this a little bit and have the council direct administration to bring back ideas and renderings as it relates to the Arts Center, the property to the west of the Arts Center, including any ideas for a modernized tomato structure.
What he said. Councillor Wilkinson.
And Mayor, can I just, with these renderings here, I'm wondering what options are going to be coming back to us. Like, define a big tomato for me. Is it going to be the exact same size as the one that's there, or could it be a 6-footer, an 8-footer? I'm just looking for a better definition on what the big tomato, what exactly that will be.
Mr. Neufeld.
I think that would be a little difficult to define here tonight, simply because, as the mayor has alluded to, there are some people who are interested in becoming involved in identifying what that new modernized structure could be. I know we picture what is already there, but consider something smaller, something elevated, something put up on a taller stand. There are so many different ideas that are available. I think that it would be too restrictive or limiting. Some of the people who have these kinds of marketing and marketing minds, that I would suggest that we'll have we'll have different options available, but I think that given the space, the limited amount of space to the west of the Arts Center, leaving it exactly the same size without giving consideration to something smaller would automatically limit what we can do in the space, including what sorts of alterations we can make to the Arts Center. So I would suggest that we not restrict it at this point, and if council's not satisfied with what comes back to them, then they're free to determine that the structure itself should be bigger or taller or redder or whatever.
Okay, so the recommendation as stated by the CAO. Moved by Councillor Hammond, seconded by Councillor Thiessen. Comments or questions on that? All in favor? Oh, sorry, Mr. Dunn.
Madam Mayor, so
Councillor Dunn.
so through those renderings, are there going to be any with the original tomato and that, or is it all going to be new stuff? You're going to come with a couple different renderings, is that what your thought is? Because I know majority might be wanting a new tomato, but I still like the heritage of the old.
Through you, Madam Mayor, understood, Councillor Dunn. I think, again, we should put this into the hands of those people who have the visionary minds for that space. What would be an appropriate size for the limited space that we have, and perhaps it is something similar. Again, I don't think we should, I would suggest we not limit it at this point.
I'm calling the question then. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it very much. So we're moving on. To the Grow Your Own PSW training program. Jeff? And ladies? Welcome. If you don't mind telling us who you are once you're seated, we'd appreciate it as well. And your address too, sorry.
Hello, I'm Deborah Groen. I'm the Program Manager for Assisted Living of Southwestern Ontario, and I live at 236 Pacific Avenue in Amherstburg.
Hi, my name is Kim Utley. I work for St. Elizabeth Healthcare. I lead our National Education Services portfolio, and I live at 196 Hudson Drive in Chatham, Ontario.
Good evening. My name is Holly Rice Mitchell, and I'm Manager of Patient Care Contracts with the Erie St. Clair LHIN. My office is based in Chatham. We cover all of Erie St. Clair, and my address is 42 Brunsma in Chatham, Ontario.
Thank you very much, and thank you for coming tonight to obviously provide any information that I might not be able to answer on specifically the specifics of the program. So, Madam Mayor, Council, the report tonight is going to be asking for a couple of recommendations. One is that Council authorize the use of a $95 minor sport rate for this for a possible long-term nonprofit rental. Also, that Council authorized the Mayor and the Clerk to enter into a 29-week agreement between the Erie St. Clair Local Health Integrated Network and the municipality for the specific use of the locker room lounge at the complex. And also that Council provide direction for the requested relief of financial support for this agreement. A little bit of the, I know some of you might be familiar with the background of that, but so I'll just go over this in brief. As you're aware, there is a shortage in the area of personal support workers. So the Erie St. Clair LHIN has the goal of obviously increasing the PSW capacity in the area, and especially specifically in the local area here. The LHIN has been tasked to try to develop a creative and sustainable methods to recruit and retrain those individuals to this field. And obviously the goal of that is to increase the capacity. That obviously will have a positive outcome for patients in the area. And the secondary benefit of the program that it will obviously provide that training and provide jobs to those people. In order to implement the Grow Your Own strategy, the LHIN has partnered with contracted service providers, specifically St. Elizabeth Healthcare Career Colleges will be providing the training, but all these service providers do participate by sponsoring students who will then remain with that agency afterwards, after graduating. So the mobile home support worker and PSW training program through St. Elizabeth Career Colleges offers a training program that obviously will meet or exceeds the Ontario PSW program standards. The 29-week program will begin with a 4-week HSW program and continues with a sponsored, which is unpaid, a free tuition PSW program. The PSW portion of the program is a 5-hour day beginning at 11 a.m. This allows the students to work as an HSW for their sponsoring agency during the busy morning and evening times throughout the program. The program is aiming to start this October and finish in May. The minimum number of students needed to run the session would be 12 with up to a maximum of 24. The organizers in consultation and going through the complex with them, said that the locker room lounge space is ideal. Some comments. As this is a new initiative, the program is currently not eligible to receive funding through the LHIN for the rental or use of classroom space, and they are asking Council for relief from paying of any fees. Given that this is a relatively new concept, with potential for continuation in subsequent years, administration is supporting the request, obviously, as a pilot program. In the formal agreement, the municipality would include the terms, obviously, the effective dates from October 7th to May 1st, 2020. There will be no exclusivity to the locker room lounge, and we will move the class accordingly to accommodate any previously scheduled or known events. Erie St. Clair LHIN would be required to provide a certificate of insurance Both parties have the right to terminate the agreement within 30 days, and the right to assign this agreement to a third party with the consent of the municipality. So as council is aware, the locker room lounge is mainly utilized for, in the evenings, for its canteen services, especially for those sporting-related events. The impact of not having the space available during the day is very minimal. So the administration supports the concept of this program. I know we've had a lot of discussion about it. However, it does not have the discretion to waive the rental fees, as these are obviously established by council. Financial impact, as you're aware, the fee schedule, there's three main rent charges that we do, and that is the $95 minor sport daily rate. We have for regular nonprofit daily rate of $280 and $380 for organizations that are profit. There are currently no long-term rental provisions in the fee schedule as it's written today for profit and or nonprofit groups. The minor sport daily rate is generally utilized when groups, those sporting groups, are booking other facilities and require additional meeting space during the those large events. It is administration's recommendation to utilize the $95 minor sport rate for the purposes of calculating the amount of relief this long-term nonprofit is requesting. Using this model, the revenue generated from the rental would be $13,205, and that obviously towards the complex rental revenue. If council should provide financial relief for this agreement, administration would recommend that this be done in the form of a grant and funded through the contingency reserve, as this item is not included in grant applications nor the 2019 budget. So, do you have any questions for myself or the group?
Thank you, Jeff. I'll give a little prelim for my end of it, council, if I may. I was reached out to by one of the organizing committee, and she apprised me of this program and the fact that at that point in time they were looking throughout the county for a home for this program. And my initial reaction was, well, why wouldn't it be in Leamington, for a whole bunch of reasons. First of all, population. Second of all the homes that are here, the retirement and senior citizens home, I think makes it a Leamington ideal location as a training ground, if you will. And then also the fact that we have ethnic groups in our community that do not encourage their daughters or their girls to go for post-secondary education. And this would give them a skill, a marketable skill, that they may not have opportunity to get if it's only offered at St. Clair College. And so to me, I jumped on it right away. I thought also that it sends a message if at some point in time other institutions of higher learning look at Leamington as opportunities, they will see that we've already done this. And I think that's always a good thing to show that a community is open for something that's not been done before. So I was all over it. Well, then we started to name places where the classes could be held. And I have to tell you, Jeff, I was like so dumb. I didn't even think about the Shirk. We tried all kinds of places. We tried SECC. We tried Family Health Team. We tried the hospital. We tried all of those things that would have been related to the people, whether it was on the education side or on the student side. And then finally, Lisa said to me, what do you think about the Shirk complex? And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't think of it. Because really, we are not using that in the day. I know you said it's like $13,000, but there's not usually anyone using those rooms in the day.
Generally not. Like the amount of rentals that will come up for the daytime hours for the lounge will be very minimal, if any.
So to me, this makes it such a wonderful opportunity to service people in our community, to service young women in our community, to service really, doesn't even really matter the age, does it? Doesn't have to be somebody that's 19 or 20. It can be somebody looking at retraining at some point in time, or someone that's raised their family and needs to go out and get a job and wants to have a marketable skill. So for us to have this opportunity in our community, I think is a bonus. So I'm hoping you all agree. With that, I'll take questions, or Jeff can take questions, or the ladies can take questions. Councillor Hammond.
Your worship, thank you. And you know, my sentiments exactly. We've had numerous conversations about trying to do something that would help our young folks be able to get training right here in Leamington, as opposed to having to drive up and down number 3 highway. Many conversations about this, so we welcome this. And thank you, Jeff, and welcome, ladies. But just to a question, at the end of the 29-week program, do you provide a diploma?
Yes, so we actually have a bricks and mortar college, St. Elizabeth Career College of Health. It's located in Ottawa. It is registered and approved by the Ministry of Training Colleges and Universities, as is our own PSW program, which makes it a diploma program, which they receive. It's transferable. They can work anywhere in Ontario with the certificate.
That's great, and I really hope that you don't have any problem getting 24 students. And honestly, I hope you're coming back next year wanting space for 48. Thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. This excites me because I know from experience how much need there is to have the PSW, especially in our community, especially in my family. So I look forward to this, and it excites me to get it going. What is the charge for the student? Is it free to them? Completely free?
Yeah, so we have recognized that the individuals who are going to be the most successful in this program are either younger girls, ethnic girls, or second career. Absolutely, you're correct with that. And they're often not in a position to be without a paycheck for the 6-month time frame, let alone pay for school on top of that. So how we manage the program is we pay them as an employer to go to school for the first 4 weeks. Then they have a home support worker designation, which is not a recognized certificate, not like PSW is. But as a home support worker, that means they can work in an abbreviated role. We let them see morning clients before class starts, so there's no downtime for them throughout the entire program from a paycheck. And then the employer sponsors the tuition fees of the program. So there's no tuition costs, and they're able to earn an income.
Excellent, excellent. Great job. I look forward to a huge success for all of us.
Yes, that's right, Councillor. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So do you currently have students signed up for the program? Will you be able to be up and running by October 7th, I believe it was?
Yes, so we have traditionally offered this program. It is extremely innovative and very brand new. So we have only 3 graduating classes. We have 7 cohorts going on right now throughout the province that are St. Elizabeth based. Only one other one that we've partnered with the Lynn, that one's in Sarnia. As we've gone through this process, we've learned a lot about how to recruit for these types of individuals. We know that it does take some time. We have started already, not promising yet. So we do already have a good 10 to 12 ready to go if we get the go-ahead. If we do need to postpone it by a week or so to ensure that we get the biggest class possible or the most robust, group of students, then we will do that. We're okay to do that as well.
And then follow up to that, do you have, will they all have placements at the end of the program? Do you have enough employers already lined up as well?
Yeah, so these individuals have to be employees of an organization sponsoring them.
They already have to
Yeah,
be. Okay.
because it's a mobile program, the ministry says it has to be third party in order for them to be able to participate. So they already have a job on their first day of school.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, and it's a great job.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about this program.
And with that, moved by Councillor Hammond, seconded by Councillor Dunn. All in favor? And that's carried. Good luck. Thank you so much. We're happy that you're here. Thanks, Jeff. Moving on to the proclamation and flag raising policies, and that is Brenda Percy, our clerk. Thank you, Brenda.
Prior to amalgamation, the municipality had a policy with regard to advertising and proclamations. However, it was subsequently rescinded on June 7, 1999, as council could not come to an agreement on which organizations to support. Policy M01, proclamations support, confirms that the municipality does not make public proclamations nor take any action that could be perceived as supporting an organization. Council at its meeting on June 25th requested administration to review the policy with respect to supporting proclamations, and previous council's decision not to make them. Proclamations are a method by which organizations seek endorsement or public support by a council of their event, achievement, or activity, or ask that a council recognize a particular day, week, or month. Proclamations may include a public or official announcement or ceremonial document, flying a flag on a municipal flagpole, or placing an advertisement. Administration surveyed a number of municipalities with regard to their policies, and the results are outlined in the appendix to the report. The report also includes reasons why a municipality would choose to allow proclamations, and also reasons why some municipalities have chosen not to. The senior management team recommends that council retain the current policy of not making proclamations, as it feels council will inevitably be put in a position where supporting one organization will impinge upon or contradict the beliefs or values of others. Local government organizations and members of council should not be expected or feel obligated to make proclamations which may have the potential to consume municipal resources that would be better used to deliver public services. If proclamations are once again permitted, administration anticipates there will be more potential harm to the municipality's image than the good gained from satisfying a certain special interest group. Should council wish to rescind the current policy and allow for public proclamations, administration would recommend that strict criteria be established outlining what is an acceptable organization or event and what is not. Under financial impact, there would be a financial impact associated with reversing this policy. For example, staff resources required to review and implement those requests. So the recommendation before council is that council direct administration with regard to this policy, either endorsing proclamations and/or flag raising requests or not.
If I may ask, is there a difference? Do you feel there's a difference between proclamation and flag raising? Can they be kept separate? Is that an option?
Some municipalities do provide for proclamations, but not flag raising, and some provide flag raising, not proclamations. Some do both.
So further to that, and I know your negative point is that we would have, spend time, staff spending time researching, if you will. Would that still pertain to just flag raising?
The time that administration would spend would be receiving the application, processing it, making a determination from the policy that council approved and the guidelines and criteria, and then it would be, I assume, it would be added to a council agenda for council to proclaim.
Okay.
The flag raising would be pretty much the same thing with the addition of having Public Works raise the flag, but it would also require that there's follow-up with the flag raising as far as when does it come down, where do we store it, who picks it up, things like that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brenda. Council, your thoughts. We'll start with Councillor Wilkinson.
I'll just have a question to get us started here. And first of all, Brenda, thank you for bringing this back. I know it was me that asked for this earlier in the year, so I really appreciate you bringing it back and all the work you put into it. For somebody like Councillor Thiessen, who's new to our council here, if you had to take a guess, how many requests do we get per year for efforts to either raise a flag or for us to support some sort of group?
I believe that the policy has been in existence for some time, so people know and don't request it, but currently I would say less than 5.
And that's what I was going to kind of guess at as well. Do we know with the other towns that don't have a proclamation policy, how much, I don't know, grief that they experience, whether it be in the media, whether it be protests outside town hall. Do we have any idea? Is there a lot of negative feedback with these communities that didn't have a proclamation policy as you did your research here?
I'm going to look to Allison because thank you for the acknowledgement of bringing the report, but it really was Allison who did all the work. And I don't believe that her research provided any feedback on whether or not there was an impact in the media or in the public by not proclaiming.
In my research, I didn't find anything that if a municipality didn't have a proclamation policy, it wasn't showing any signs of negative feedback. That would be something I'd have to go back and look at more specifically. So.
Thank you. That's kind of what I guessed, and I haven't seen anything on the local news too often where I see people are protesting outside the hall. If, let's say, they decide to support autism or something like that, I don't see, I haven't ever seen on any of the national news where they have that type of grief happening. I have other thoughts here, but I kind of like to listen to the rest of council here, and I just had those questions to get us started.
I'm going to jump in if you don't mind, Councillor. For me, my negative connotation of not doing it has always been with Franco-Ontarian Day. I've been invited to that school for the last 3 years, and I've felt not embarrassed, but I just felt that they are a key element of our town, and we were not willing to raise the flag on the day that they celebrate their heritage. And whether or not you agree with it, it is a part of our history. And I really liked it when council last week decided that we would raise the flag of Mexico for the Noche Mexicana this coming weekend. And I know years ago, when I was first on council, the raising of the flag for Pride was a touchy subject. But that was, when you look in those dates, when the mayor of 1999, 91, when the mayor of London got fined, it's more than 20 years ago. We've changed. We've become more inclusive when it comes to things like that. We try not to discriminate based on gender or sexual orientation or whatever. So to me, those areas of potential controversy have become less controversial simply because we're not taking a stand pro or not. We're just saying we're including you in our society. So to me, that part is less problematic than it was that many years ago. But then again, do we want to be raising the flag? Do we want Public Works out here a couple times a week raising a flag? I don't know if we want to get into that. But then I look at Ottawa, and they do proclamations and they raise the flag, and I'm thinking, and they're the capital of our country. Do we follow what they're doing? So I lean towards saying, yes, we do need to raise the flag for some things like Noche Mexicana, as well as Franco-Ontarian Day. But do we need to raise the flag for everything? I'm not so sure I want to get council and our staff into that simply because of the time involved. So those are my 2 cents worth, because I was with you on that, Councillor. I thought too it was a good time to have this discussion based on the way, talking about evolution, how society has evolved as well. So I will take other comments. Would you like to go next? Okay, Deputy Mayor,
Thank you, Mayor. No, I just want to make sure you said we're going to start and go that way. So anyway, I guess I'm okay with it, but I'm also okay with we shouldn't discriminate. So if anybody wants to put up, we should have no say, because I can see us running into problems. So if an organization wants to put one up that's religious and I don't feel comfortable with it, or, you got your cancer, your autism, there's some, but I can still say, I'm not going to support it. I'd like to leave it the way it is. I'm just going to say we could run into more problems, I believe.
Fair enough. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I got to agree with Councilor Verbeek. I just think that this is a very slippery slope. If we do it for one, you almost have to do it for others. Otherwise, we're going to end up in court. Somebody's going to sue. There seems to be a special interest group for everything anymore. Uh, just recently, well, on the weekend in Windsor, there were some protests going on. It wasn't over a flag being raised or anything, but there's protests happening all the time. Uh, we had animal activist groups show up at the Harrow Fair. We've got somebody tried stealing rabbits and the farmer shot at them down in Australia, and they're trespassing on a private property. I think there are special interest groups for almost everything anymore, and I'm just concerned that we will run into more trouble raising certain flags, making proclamations, especially when you have a very diverse group of people that live in the town. One group of people might be very opposed to another group's flag being raised, and not saying that that may happen right away, but down the road it's very possible. And to me, I would like to leave it the way it is.
Councillor Dunn. You had your hand up first. I'll go back to Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I tend to agree with the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Thiessen. The fact that we have so many different interest groups that we don't know about, even that may pop up wanting their flag flown for whatever reason, and we may end up in court. I think that the way we have it set up right now, and I do appreciate the multicultural we have in our area, but now you're going to open it up to everybody wanting their flag flown, and there's just so many out there. It would be on a daily basis, you could almost have a flag being put up. That's just my thoughts.
Councillor Hammond.
Yeah, Your Worship, thank you. And understanding the points raised by other councillors here, believe me, I do. And the only, we've already opened that door last week, or last meeting, we've opened the door already to fly the Mexican flag this upcoming weekend. And we were in support of that. But I first want to talk a bit about proclamations. At our last meeting, I brought forward during open session that I'd like to see a volunteer day recognized in Leamington. And I believe that that would fall under the premise of proclamation, if in fact we have one day set aside for volunteers. So I still would like to see the volunteer day be recognized next year. But if we do away with proclamations, then that then becomes redundant. So I want to talk again about flag raising. I agree that we could be opening up a Councillor Thiessen said, a slippery slope, and I agree with that. But also, too, to your point, Mayor, that, you know, I went once to the Franco Ontarian session once, and I felt bad because even the young children were asking why we couldn't put the flag up. No, maybe they were asked to ask me that, but they did. You know, we've got, I'm sure, a large portion of our young people here in Leamington have gone to that school and have taken French. Now, I'm wondering, to try and, you know, to try to bring this together, that we ask administration to take a look at this. And maybe there's only 3 different things that we're going to raise the flag for or lower the flag for. But then again, at least we will be inclusive in looking at our Mexican community and our Francophone community and some of these other ones. So I'm asking, and my thoughts are that we ask administration to at least take a look at it. And if we limit it to those, I'm sure that there'll be some and to your point, Councillor Thiessen, some are going to protest. Well, let them protest when they don't see it on the original list, right? Because the list will come down and it'll be there, and that's what we're going to have to deal with. And moving forward. But I think that we're in a new time frame now. I mean, that policy's been in place for how many years now? And I just think it's time to take a look at it. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
I just would like to answer. I think, too, it's a new day. I think if we were just inventing this idea and being the first community to come out with proclamations and flag raising, I'd agree with you, Councillor Thiessen. But we're not. They're doing it all over the country. You don't see people protesting now because the pride flag is going up. That's been going up for 10 years. Or, or the flag of Mexico, or the Franco-Ontarian. I can see us not putting up flags that are for terrorist groups or anything like that. But when we have people in our community that are a key stakeholder in the community, not to recognize what they bring to the table, I think is, it's not backward, but it's not acknowledging that, and I don't think that's right. I think we need to acknowledge some of the things. And maybe it happens too much, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I think that is old thinking. I think that's fearful thinking. I think we need to be open. I think we need to be inclusive, and by doing that, raising a flag, I don't see how that can hurt. As long as we don't step into things that are controversial, like a terrorist flag, we wouldn't raise that. If it's a autism flag, why wouldn't we do that? Those are members of our community. I just don't see the fear in it, because we're not doing this as first out of the gate. With that, I'll go to the Deputy Mayor.
For the mayor, thanks. I have no problem announcing proclamations, though. I think it should come from the mayor's chair that, it's Cancer Month. It's, I mean, it's Autism Month. And I could see that. Raising flags, and let's just do what some of the other ones are doing, just raise the national flags, provincial and stuff like that. I just can't see raising the flags right now unless we do them all. But proclamation, I could see it coming, a written proclamation by you at a council meeting announcing the event.
Okay, before I go to Councillor Wilkinson, then I'll just say back to you. So what happens to the Mexican flag raising that we're doing this weekend? Then we won't do it again? That's going to be a one-off?
Have to, or if you're going to raise the flag of everybody else, then that's where it gets raised.
At the marina?
Yes. Or the park eventually next year, if there's flagpoles in the budget. I just, because you didn't want it here, you wanted it at the park before, so I don't know. It's just, who's going to police this? What's it going to cost? And you're going to...
But if you're going to raise it at the marina, you're still going to have a policy. You can't...
Well, no, that's the policy. It's all or nothing. That's how I see it. Everybody gets a kick at that can. Everybody can put their flag up at the marina.
Councillor Wilkinson.
I believe we have an American flag flying at the marina 365 days a year, don't we? I was never planning on getting technical or anything like that, but what are we going to do about the American flag that flies there then? I'd rather fly the flag of a lot of other countries before I fly the American flag these days, to tell you the truth. For me, it's all about inclusivity. Our town is very, very unique. It's a big melting pot anymore. Just driving to work here today, going by a bus stop, I seen so many different nations sitting at the bus stop. It's very noticeable anymore. So that word inclusivity, I think we need to be a town that embraces that. And yes, this policy was created in 1999. We've come a long way since then. People are more open-minded, not as ignorant. And I'll be the first to say that I've been guilty many times of, having comments like that. But I want to be part of a town that leads the way, and I thought it was pretty brave. Our school board is similar to what we do up here. The school board, they made that decision here not too long ago. And the reason they did that was to be a reflection of their population that they had inside the school. That made me take notice that night where I'm like, that was pretty ballsy, I thought, of them to do that. So I commend the school board when they did do that. I see it when I go to pick up my own kids at the school. It's a whole nation of different backgrounds are there. Not only nations, but maybe, we talk about gay pride, or sorry, the pride movement. It's not only about nations. Let's say, I do think we need to have some limitations, of course. a country that's maybe ruled by a dictatorship or communists, something like that, I can see, no, we aren't going to ever put the flag of North Korea up there. That makes sense to me. But with every decision that we make here, we have risks. You know, there's always risk with every decision we make. We are so open and we have so much liability, you know. I think though here, I think we're blowing it out of proportion. I don't think we're going to have a lot of people come at us because we're going to fly the Mexican flag here this weekend. And so what? If every once in a while we get caught, let's say we put up a flag that is a little bit more controversial. We won't name the countries, but maybe we do. And if we do get caught and we take a little bit of flack, so be it, you know. Sorry, we made a mistake. We're human. Let's move on. Maybe we won't do it the next year. I think the benefits here outweigh the risk. You know, if you don't decide to embrace this, and if you don't, I respect that. I'm not going to die on this hill, and I really appreciate all the comments of council and the work that administration put into it. But I think there is a lot of award here versus the small little bit of risk that you guys are worried about. I don't know. I hope you consider that. My comments. Anyway, that's my thoughts.
I have the CAO next, Mr. Dunn, Councillor Dunn, if you don't mind, and then we'll go to you. Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You'll notice in the report, it says that if council is going to go forward, there has to be some criteria, specific criteria, in order to manage this. So, for example, what is the criteria? I heard the mayor say, you know, if it's a key stakeholder in the community. Okay, so that would be one criteria that we could consider. But you know, I'm sure we can. I'm not sure we can come with a list of what is an acceptable or a not acceptable group or special interest. So I'll give you an example. It's one of the most divisive and long-lasting controversies, whether it's pro-life or pro-choice. That is something that still exists today. What's the criteria that council would ask administration to consider when identifying whether we fly the North Korea flag or the South Korean flag? You know, what administration is trying to do is say there are some landmines out there that we don't even know are there, and if we're going to put together a policy or a list, then we need to know what the criteria is that council wants us to use, so that when a group who is excluded comes forward and says, why were we excluded? Here's the criteria for consideration. It's not, oh, well, we just put together a list of the organizations that we think are worthy of flying the flag. So I think that's why administration is so cautious around this. And as it relates back to the Mexican flag, you'll recall that I spoke to that, and in particular I spoke to the fact that if we're going to set a precedent on that, it is that they have a consulate in our municipality. This lends to the mayor's comment about key stakeholder in the community. This is not just somebody who's coming forward and asking us to fly a flag in a special interest group. This is any consulate, I suppose, that opens up in Leamington would be given the same consideration. So I don't think that the Mexican flag raising this weekend is an example to be used to say we're all or nothing, because I think that is quite distinguishable. But there are some pitfalls out there that I can see, and administration can see, and I raised that one pro-life versus pro-choice just to get you to consider just how divisive a proclamation or raising of a flag can be to a community that has so many different perspectives.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I understand where you come from, Councillor Wilkinson. I am all about multiculturalism, all the food, the culture, and we have such great community partners in our community. In fact, on the Migrant Worker Community Program, there's 10 different countries that come here and work for us in our area. But that was that scare of what the CEO alluded, the pro-life and the not pro-life, pro-choice. That scares me. It's getting caught up into that and being held. If it was just be able to handle all the flags of the countries and our people, supporting our people in our area, that I could see. Maybe it's a little further look into it with administration, but I just don't. That cautiousness about having somebody coming up saying, oh, you're flying that flag, diabetes, then you should be able to fly our pro-choice flag and that kind of thing. And that would just scare me to get caught up in that kind of situation that would actually cost us in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Hammond, I had you next.
Again, thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to address Peter just for a moment. So some of the criteria that you've already outlined, Peter, could possibly be used. I mean, I wouldn't think that pro-life and pro-choice, we've got a line divided down the middle where 50% of the people are in favor and 50% are not. So that obviously is the criteria that we would use to say, no, we're not going to get involved in that form of a debate. You also touched on having a consulate here. So maybe that's a piece of criteria that we could use moving forward. I think we could eliminate a lot of, and to the proclamation of the Francophone community. I mean, we do have schools here, right? So you might look at a school as being equivalent to a consulate in terms of trying to make that criteria work. So just a form of suggestion. And again, those just some thoughts that I've had.
I have Councillor Wilkinson as well.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, are you finished?
I was
No?
finished, Mayor, but I just want to make one further comment, if you don't mind. Please.
Okay.
Would it hurt to sit down, to move forward and have administration look at that with your guidance, Peter, to see what kind of criteria we could use or what kind of format we would use to determine who we do and we do not raise flags for?
Well, the U.S. one does intrigue me, why we fly the U.S. flag, and when that was decided, when we have a policy. Yeah, but there should have been a policy. So when did we decide that we could fly the U.S. flag, and why? I mean, yes, they're voters, but okay. All right, just curious. So I have Councillor Wilkinson next.
Thanks again. And Peter, great comments. I totally see. I wouldn't know how to come up with a list either if I were you, Ruth, whoever. But like the mayor said, we aren't the first here. We aren't reinventing the wheel here. I'd like us to at least review, what these other cities, towns have been doing. Maybe they have a list already. It's quite, ingenious how they came up with this. I don't know. If you get something like the pro-life one, yes. Who's to say it can't come back to the council table to say, to be discussed? We had a letter came in the mail, pro-choice people want us to consider flying their flags. What do you want to do, council? And why does council have to do anything? Maybe we don't do anything. Maybe it's too divisive when we say, something, we're going to pass on that one. How many other really eggshell topics are there like that pro-life? How many are we actually going to get? You could toss that back to the council that day to say, what do you want to do with this one? And maybe council will say, we aren't going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. We just aren't going to do anything. Why can't that be an option?
Well, and I look at the city of Ottawa. I mean, they support both proclamations and flag raising. So to me, they're well versed in being politically correct and being careful. I just hate to. I agree with Councillor Wilkinson that there's less to be afraid of than the pros of it. And because we are a multicultural town beyond anyone else in our county, I'd sure like us to be open to it. I just think it's being overly cautious anymore. I mean, yes, those are issues, pro-choice, pro-life, those have already been decided by the feds. That issue's been decided by the federal government. We don't even have to weigh in on that. To me, that's what I would say. Same with, what we said about cannabis being a moral decision. That wasn't our decision. They decided it. They've decided, basically the feds have decided whether pro-life is the way or whatever. To me, if we looked at the countries that are represented in our community and raised a flag for them, I don't see a problem. I see it as showing that we're brave enough to stand up for the people that live here, that we're not just about being Canadian, we're about being all the people that make us be Canadians. And that's what it is to me, more than it is about taking a political side. It's the same as we, as municipal representatives, cannot really be partisan when it comes to federal and provincial. We have to be careful so we don't do those kinds of things, but we can be pro the French kids that go to our school, the kids that go to the French school and are proud of the dual heritage of our country. To not fly that flag, I just think is almost petty. And it makes me sad that we don't have the guts to stand up for some of it. Some of it just needs to be us saying, you know what, yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to be gutsy and raise that flag because it means something to the residents of our community that we represent. Mr. Neufeld?
Well, if council decides that that is the direction that they want administration to give direction to administration to try and come back with some thoughts on this, I would suggest quite strongly that you not ask administration to come back with a list of acceptable and not acceptable causes, but rather we want to be able to justify the decisions that council makes, even if it comes before council. Because to address Councillor Wilkinson, to say, well, we're not going to do anything, is still a decision not to fly the flag of an organization that has asked. So what was the criteria that council would use in order to determine whether they would or wouldn't fly a flag? That's what I'm trying to get at. So some of the things that I'm hearing are the flying of a flag in Leamington is intended to create a feeling of inclusivity, to recognize our multicultural base, to recognize the important issues, or sorry, the important identifiers of local stakeholders, which would include things like local schools. So if what council, if I'm articulating what you're feeling, then I think administration will take a shot at trying to come up with the criteria that will not only, the criteria itself would be inclusive, so that what we're trying to accomplish here is to make people feel welcome in Leamington. And I think maybe we'll take a shot at it and come back to council with some ideas on the criteria that would be used in determining the answer when a group comes forward. And if that's helpful, Madam Mayor, that would be my suggestion.
Councillor Hammond.
And Mr. Neufeld, that might be a great approach. Some things that very quickly, and I won't belabor this any longer, that came to mind as we were sitting here is that, the Lebanese community just had a large festival a couple of weeks ago, which most of us attended. Thousands of people were there. So if they come and ask us to raise the flag for one day, whether it be the Italian community, the Portuguese community, they all have festivals once a year. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking that we can be inclusive and, and trying to deal with some of our ethnic communities. So those are just some more thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn.
I just want to reiterate what Councillor Hammond was saying. That I agree with that. For representing the festivals and the people of our community in that respect, I think I would support something like that. That excites me because with the multiculturalism and the Carousel of Nations, I think that would just embrace what we have here and bring people into our community for that kind of thing. So.
When you think of the Carousel of Nations and all those flags that they fly at the beginning of their festival, it's pretty impressive, isn't it, Bill? And that when you say Carousel of Nations, that what comes to my mind is that row of flags of all the countries represented. Thank you. Have you next, Councillor Wilkinson.
And Mr. Neufeld, I'm good with that. And in fairness to Councillor Jacobs, who's not here tonight, I think, I know he has some thoughts on this as well. I've talked to him about this in the past. I think it's only fair that he gets in on the vote as well. So if Peter wants to take a shot at it the way he was talking, I welcome that and bring it back for another day.
Deputy Mayor.
I don't know how to ask this. Maybe I got to ask for forgiveness afterwards, but tomorrow I'm going to get 9 different country flags, and they will be present at Seacliff Amphitheater on Sunday night. So is that okay, or do I have to ask permission first?
I guess I would ask how you're going to fly them.
On a base, Canadian flag proper, 8 other countries on the stage, on a base, just flying. Each national anthem will be played when their country's called up.
Is that for the migrant worker? That's for the migrant worker, Noche Mexicana. Ms. Orton?
That's in the process of the event, I understand, so that would be the event organizer undertaking that endeavor. It's not a municipal undertaking, so there would be no requirement to comply
That's
with
fair.
it.
That makes it easy. So, and also a follow-up, Mayor. Then I think we've all been around here. I think the recommendation speaks of itself. So Peter's included some of it, but I think that Council Direct Administration, with regard to Policy M01 and endorsing proclamation that our flag raising is a request, and it has another bylaw there too now from legal. So I think that the recommendation is already there, and I'll move the recommendation the way it's presented here.
Oh, yeah, are we not just looking for direction? Ms. Percy, could you speak to that, because we're giving direction to staff?
So if I'm understanding where council's going, they're directing administration to bring back a report that provides for criteria that would allow for proclamations.
And flag raisings.
That includes.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll still move it and hopefully get a seconder so we can have further discussion.
Do we need a motion when it comes to direction? Yes, okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Seconded by Councillor Dunn. Are there comments or questions? Pardon? This is on the CAO's suggestion of bringing a report back, because then we'll be making that decision going forward. Then if it's impossible to come up with something that we can live with, then we may all claw back on this. But at least we'll see if it's within our comfort zone, if you will. Does that sound good? Okay, and with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And that will also address Councillor Jacobs being in on that discussion at that point in time. Great. That is really great conversation, Council. I love to hear it, whether we agree with each other or not, but I think we all have valid points, and I'm proud to call you my colleagues. What's that? It's not the first time? Anyway, I'm proud of the discussion that We have. So now we're moving on to the review of police services and the retaining of the consultant for that. And I will turn to Ms. Orton for that report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is in follow-up to Council's special meeting of August 15th, where Mike Mitchell presented and reviewed options for police services that are available under the Police Services Act. At that meeting, Council directed administration to bring forward a report for Council's consideration with regard to establishing the minimum levels of police service. We did advise at that meeting that administration would work with Mr. Mitchell in connection with the preparation of that report. Mr. Mitchell has now submitted a proposal to undertake the work required. The first phase proposed involves him researching all available statistical information and enforcement indicators, examining services in other municipalities of a similar size, interviewing relevant parties to evaluate the level of policing being received by the municipality currently and the level of resources used to provide that service. Following this review, Mr. Mitchell would present his findings to Council and obtain further direction. If Council directed, there would be a second phase that would involve community consultation to determine the public perception of the current level of service and solicit input into priorities. Mr. Mitchell would meet with groups and individuals that regularly interact with the police or require assistance. Following that consultation, Mr. Mitchell would summarize his findings, and that would form the basis of the level of service to be presented to Council for consideration. The cost of the first phase is $13,500 plus HST, and the second phase is $25,500 plus HST. These costs include all fees, travel, and accommodations, and any other expenses that may be incurred. The costs may be charged to the legal professional services account. So the recommendation is that Mike Mitchell of MPM Consulting be retained to prepare a report evaluating the current level of policing received by the municipality, and if directed by Council, to prepare a second report regarding the establishment of minimum levels of police service, and that the Director of Legal and Legislative Services be authorized to execute all documents required to establish that retainer.
Thank you, Ruth. Questions, comments, Council? Deputy Mayor.
It's a question about policing, and I'm worthy mayor, thanks, and I'm going to ask Laura this question. Laura, what is our costs per person, per household? Can you get back to that for the police we have now? I'm okay with the report, and I'm going to support it, but this is a curiosity. I'm trying to do some background checking on stuff, so.
Through you, Mayor McDonald, it's about $460 per property.
Per property,
Can
thank
I
you.
qualify that per property?
Yep, thank you.
Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is regarding Mike Mitchell. He came up with the different scenarios for policing. And in my recent vacation, I noticed there was RCMP, and that wasn't included. RCMP wasn't a part of that. And I was just curious why. For the fact that there are RCMP in Ottawa and in other provinces, but why are they not, why can they not be one of the options?
I would have to confirm. I assume you were vacationing outside of Ontario?
Yes, in BC, and it was all RCMP.
Right. I believe it's because in Ontario, under the Police Services Act, there is the Ontario Provincial Police. I don't believe that any other province has a provincial police service, so therefore their fallback is the RCMP that acts like the Ontario Provincial Police in Ontario. But I will confirm that with Mr. Mitchell and provide you a better answer to that question.
Thank you. It was just another option that came to mind when I was out there, and why? Because we were looking at as many different options as possible when he comes to bring this information to try and get the best solution for our community. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Thiessen, please.
So we would be able to get through the first phase at 13,000 and then decide whether or not we wanted to go further, correct? We would see the report, and at that point, we can make that decision.
Yes, there would not be unless council provided different direction to Mr. Mitchell on the second phase. This was his proposal currently, so there is no obligation to proceed with the second phase. The first phase would be determinative as to what would happen at the next step.
Okay, thank you. And I am in support of this report. The more time goes on, the more people you talk to, I think we are certainly on the right track. I did get an earful on Friday night that we are getting misinformation and that we are not correct in our assumptions of the police force. I will follow up with that person shortly. But then in light of the letter we got today, which further confirms the issues that we're having, I think we are absolutely on the right course in this.
Councillor Hammond.
Mayor, thank you. At the last meeting, not the last meeting, when Mr. Mitchell was here, I had asked if it's possible to receive a copy of Amherstburg's proposal when they RFP'd that, and it was indicated that yes, we could. Could we all receive a copy of that? I don't know if everybody else wants it, but I certainly would like a copy of it if it's possible.
You would like a copy of their request for proposal?
The criteria that they used, they outlined in their proposal for RFP, yes.
I can send that.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm waiting for a motion, I believe, if you're looking to agree with the process going forward. Councillor Thiessen, Councillor Dunn, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Ruth. Well, moving on to the addendum, even though you thought you were finished. We now have the 2020 countywide active transportation, the project applications, and that's with you, Mr. Sharon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Annually, local municipalities must submit applications to the CWATS committee for projects that have cost-sharing components between the local municipality and the County of Essex. This year, administration proposes funding 2 functional design studies of our active transportation facilities. The first is a functional design study in order to connect the bike lanes that we currently have on Talbot East with the paved shoulders on County Road 34. In short, we essentially need to figure out how we get through that intersection appropriately on County Road 33. The second is to examine the possibility of a multi-use trail on Point Peely Drive from Sturgeon Creek to Road 12. Both projects are cost-shared 60-40, 60 being the local share and 40 being the county share because they're located in designated built-up areas within the county OP. And so this would result in a cost of $18,000 and $30,000 to Leamington respectively. Going to speak a little bit about the Point Peely Drive consideration. The recent petition for drainage from the County of Essex to look after stormwater management, essentially between the Sturgeon Creek Bridge and Road 12, in our minds opened up a real possibility to build a better active transportation facility that was considered in the past. Essentially, and that is because there is a swale currently on the, we'll call it the land side of Point Peely Drive, that deals with stormwater management, and the thought process being before we went ahead and built any type of other facility, such as paved shoulders, which have been considered in the past, that we should have a hard look about the possibility of enclosing that swale with a drainage pipe and then using that public right-of-way to build a separated multi-use facility. And, you know, essentially it represents an evolution of our considerations for active transportation for Point Peely Drive. When the CWATS study was first completed, really there were no facilities identified through that section other than share the road. We didn't feel that that was appropriate, and so we encouraged a functional design study of paved shoulders, because we thought it was a practical, achievable option to have active transportation through there. And that study did reveal that it was possible to build it, the total cost being approximately $1.8 million to build paved shoulders through that section. Recognizing that about 500,000 of that was the reconstruction of the bridge over the BC drain in and around Ellis. And so, now we're looking at this other possibility. And certainly, as noted in the report, separated multi-use trail, it would essentially produce the outcomes that I think council desires for along Point Peely Drive. Certainly, if the goal is to get people from our urban area to the park, or to get tourists from our urban area who are staying in the various hotels to Point Peely National Park, a separated multi-use trail facility would be a much more desirable facility for all users, especially the tourists and families and people who aren't necessarily comfortable riding on a highway and sharing the paved lanes with vehicles traveling in excess of 70 kilometers an hour. So the recommendation before council is to support the submission to the County of Essex as noted in the recommendation.
Thank you, Rob. That's exciting. It's the first step. After going to the Netherlands and seeing the bikes and the bike system there, and knowing that Europe tends to be the leader in what's happening in the world and what's current and what's modern, we definitely need to move towards that. I'd like to know what council thinks, or are you just automatically going to move it and away we go? Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you again. I've always got an opinion, but Rob, I'm excited about the report, especially Point Peely Drive. We've talked about that for a long time. Those folks down there have really wanted to see this happen. So if this is a beginning of that, that is great. The only comment that I will have, though, is when we talk to the county, and if they look at putting that culvert in on Ellis Street, I think I brought this up a year or so ago, that we would ask them to consider making Ellis a one-way street, because, we have that huge ditch on the one side. It's got to be at least 10 foot deep, and Ellis Road, for those of us that have been down it a few times, is extremely narrow. And I'm surprised at this point we haven't had an accident where somebody's gone down, and maybe they have. Somebody's gone down in the ditch. So maybe when you're doing some of your preliminary reports, you could ask them to take a look at that and see if it's something that they might be interested in doing for us.
Anyone else? And with that, well, there's a request to submit an application, so move the recommendation in its entirety. And that's moved by the Deputy Mayor and seconded by Councillor Wilkinson. All in favor? And that's carried. There you go, Rob. Exciting times in the municipality of Leamington. But this is Leamington that it's happening in. We just need to make sure the county's on board with us. And so there are other matters for approval. There's none. Moving on to the bylaws, and I will turn to our clerk for those.
Bylaw 4819 being a bylaw to provide for the improvements to the McCracken Drain in Lot 7 to 9, Concession 6, in the municipality of Leamington, County of Essex. That's first and second reading only. Bylaw 4919, bylaw to provide for the improvements to the Judson Morse Drain, lower portion in Lot 2, Concession 1, municipality of Leamington, County of Essex, first and second reading only. And then bylaw 50-19, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Leamington at its meeting held September 10th, 2019.
Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Councillor Thiessen. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. There are no notices of motion, but now we're on to open session for council and admin. Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to bring a couple things to people's attention. Tomorrow is the Poor Boy Luncheon at the Roma Club. We need to get out and support them. Good causes. Toys for Tots and the Gleaners, I believe. Also, this coming weekend, get out and support the Mexican Consulate on the 14th, which is the Saturday. It'll be a great festival, as well as the Festival of Guest Nations, the migrant workers, our guest nations. We want to welcome them. Again, there's going to be music and A lot of things to do, so come on out and enjoy us down at the amphitheater.
Flag raising is at 10:30 at the base of the dock there for the Noche Mexicana on this Saturday morning.
Thank you for that. Also, the Festival of Guest Nations is from 1 to 6, so it's in the afternoon.
On
So-
Sunday.
On Sunday.
Perfect. Okay. Oh, great. Thanks for that, Councillor.
Thank you.
Next, I have Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got two items. So first, we'll start off, the Mill Street Market again on Friday was great. Nothing but a lot of good comments. It was a great evening, a lot of people there. One issue did come up, and I'm sure most of us here are well aware of it. I was stationed at the halfway down Mill at a certain club that was serving alcohol, and my job was to make sure that patrons went in with one drink and came out with one drink because of the Alcohol and Gaming Commission's license that we have. That was certainly interesting. There were a lot of people, most people understood. There was one guy who was absolutely irate. There were others that weren't very happy about it when you told them that they couldn't take all 5 of their drinks down to their friends down by the Tomato, that they would have to make 5 trips with it. The owner of the property, of the club, was sitting right there, saw what was happening, did nothing to stop what was going on. The ladies who were waitressing, who were serving drinks, a couple of times I heard them say you could only take one drink out, but most of the time they just poured the drinks and sold it to them. We need to change something next go around. I don't think that can happen again. I know Paul was there with me, stood by, kept me company for the evening, and was also my bodyguard. And I just think that we either he has to come into compliance and serve only one drink at a time. If that's our license is at risk here. And if the people want to continue to congregate on Mill Street and have a drink with friends, which most of us like to do, we need to protect that license. And to have one guy screw it up for us isn't right. So either he needs to come into compliance, or we just need to close off his entrance onto Mill Street. That's my first comment. Second one, I've had ongoing talks with a resident of Weigel Street, and this goes back, I'm looking at my first email, was around the 8th of August, and it's about garbage and neighbors all up and down the street putting garbage out. Their garbage day is Tuesday. Garbage will be put out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I've been taking note quite often, and this person has had contact with our municipality, and on a couple times it has been cleaned up, but it's an ongoing problem. Is there anything that can be done? The house is notified about the ongoing garbage issue, and I took a drive down there on Saturday. There were mattresses at multiple residences. There was garbage, there was yard waste, and it wasn't just Weigel Street. Erie Street was just as bad on Saturday afternoon. So is that something that can be rectified, or what is the direction that we can take for that?
If they're putting garbage out on a day that is not immediately prior to the garbage pickup day, we can issue tickets for that. We just need to know the addresses, and we can go out and issue that ticket if we have that information.
So then this should be issued into City Works each and every time, and the bylaw officers will go out and issue tickets, or at least, I guess, first educate the first time. Second time they will write tickets.
Yes.
And if they're going down to a residence at the end of Weigel and they pass by 3 or 4 or 5 that have garbage out, will they stop and do those as well right away, or do they have to be notified?
They can just issue the ticket. There's no need to notify them. If the ticket can be issued if they see that the garbage is out there prior to the time that's noted in the waste management bylaw.
I'm going to comment further to that. We had that mess this morning on Princess Street and by a store owner who has been uptown, I'm going to say, for decades. You should have seen the pile of garbage. It was ridiculous. I'm wondering if we need to do a blitz. If we need to say to bylaw, we want a three weekend blitz, Saturday or whatever, and nail everybody who does it, because I think it's a bunch of people becoming complacent and thinking they can get away with it. Back in the day, and I'm thinking Old Town Hall, bylaw used to go and issue tickets, and then for a while, the property owners would try and come to council and ask for forgiveness. Oh, they didn't know this was a tenant, and we flat out said, no, we're not considering it. And then it seemed to die off. Maybe it's just time to do it again because people get nervy. I mean, that's ridiculous. On a Sunday to see garbage that's not going to be picked up for 2 days, I've seen it, I'm with you. Exactly the same thing. What's wrong? How do you not know that? And like I said, this guy today should have been ashamed of himself. He's been a business owner plenty long enough. And to throw stuff like that on Princess Street, on a side thoroughfare, but still a thoroughfare. I got the picture at 8:15 in the morning. Ridiculous. So maybe we just need to do a blitz of some sort. I mean, I know that means maybe overtime dollars or something like that, but you know what? We need to take some of these things back and say, you know what, we're not putting up with this anymore. Is that doable? Okay, I think,
Sorry,
no, that's
yeah,
good.
I'm making a note here, and we'll turn our minds to it and see how we can do it. Especially, you mentioned, well, maybe there might be some overtime costs. Well, if that's the direction of council, so be it. We'll have a discussion and see how we can bring something forward.
That'd be great. Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Would there also, like, during tax time, when they're paying their taxes, can there be reminders, notices on certain things like that? Like you remember that you put garbage out 2 days or ahead of time, you could be fined? Except some other country, like other nationalities have moved into the area too, so.
Did you want to speak to that?
I'm
Ms.
just
Orton?
wondering, and I'm not sure if it's there or not, but we can certainly look at it. We can put it in we call it the garbage calendar that goes out. It might already be in there, but we can look at it for next year too.
I check my garbage calendar every time there's a holiday because it sometimes throws things off. People will just need to, we're already providing them with the tools and we're picking up the garbage. Their responsibility is far less than what we're doing. And I think to take that on and pay attention to what day your garbage goes out, it's the same as putting on your pants every day. Simple as that. And with that, I'll turn to the Deputy Mayor.
Wow, thank you, Mayor. I don't know how to follow that. I just want to, I want to go to Rob for a second. Rob, at a meeting today at the chamber, talking to a couple of employees who would like the bus schedule to change and blah, blah, blah. And I know it's there. It's not doing good. And talking then with Karen to maybe see from Switzer Cartier to see if there's a bus route up because some of the farmers want it up. So, I mean, it's still all preliminary, the bus. But how is the bus ridership going after that email we got from you first?
To your worship. Deputy Mayor, you mean specifically the LTW, the Route 42? The road is doing well. Further, I think I sent council a note after the first day of classes at St. Clair because that was going to be, the telling factor, how many students got on and used it. And since then, we've averaged numbers actually slightly higher on a daily basis than we saw that first day. So that's fantastic. With regard to the route specifically, we have been telling everyone who has comment on the route to submit us those comment for review at a strategic point in time, but we're not entertaining any changes to the route at this time. We have to remember a year ago we had nothing. And we had to try, and as you can appreciate, transit services are very expensive. Fares for this transit service in particular, I think, projected to cover around 25% of the operating costs. And, therefore, you have to try and design a system that will benefit the most amount of people for the limited funds that we have to run the transit service. The times are very strategic. They have to do with when students at St. Clair College, when they're going to start. Again, having the bus running, and also given the fact that we have partnered with Transit Windsor to provide the service, that also impacts our ability as to when we start or don't start. And so as you can appreciate, we have heard everything. We've heard, there's not enough runs, it needs to start earlier, it needs to start later, there needs to be Sunday service. And it's not like we're disregarding those comments. Certainly, we are noting them and we will review them in the context of the service we're providing now and when riders are getting on. But those times just didn't happen. We spent a lot of time determining, given this amount of funds, given the amount of revenue we expect out of the fares, and therefore how much money we have to run the service, when are the optimal times to have these bus routes coming in and out of the community? And that's how they were determined. So again, we would encourage people, if they have comment, let us know. We will be looking at it, but certainly for this academic year, we don't plan on making any changes.
Next, I have Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you. This coming Thursday evening is the Flyers home opener. The Flyers will take on the St. Thomas Stars. They started their season up in the Niagara area. They won their first 2 games, so they're sitting on top of their division right now. So we hope to see everyone out this coming Thursday night. Game time's 7:10.
Councillor Hammond, oh, you already said that. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship. 3 things. First of all, to our baseball program here in Leamington, I want to thank the Junior Barons for the invite out. Councillor Hammond joined me the other day as they hung their shingle on our sign down at the Kinsman Diamonds. That weekend, we had other teams playing in the championships as well across Ontario. I know one of them was a winner, the Midgets, I believe. And there was a few others playing for championships. I'm not sure how they did, but we've had a very successful year with South Point Minor Ball and the Baron program. So pass that on to our Minor Baseball Association. They've been recognized, and we look forward to working with them next year. Second thing, I'm going to kind of build on Councillor Thiessen's comments about Mill Street Market. I too worked the shift from 8 o'clock till 10 o'clock in front of Club Paradise. And yes, let me tell you, that's the witching hour that can turn into out there. Strange, goofy things going on out there, awkward situations that you're putting our volunteers in. I was the one that night trying to negotiate with people. You put a volunteer in an awkward spot where you're dealing with a person who's at those times could be well overserved. I don't think it's right that we put our volunteers in those situations. I think that's where we got the paid security at those points, during that festival. We need to put them there instead of putting volunteers there. We're just asking for a bad situation. The next thing that kind of I find odd is, and I think we got to review this. We got to have this discussion. People off our street attending our festival go into the bars, these establishments, and buy a beer for $5 when they'll buy it out on the street for $7. It flies in the face of one another. It's, if I was a vendor, I'd be saying, what the heck? I've seen the amount of people that are going into this bar simply to get a drink, come back out, and I don't know how we have any control over that either. We don't want everybody being overserved at our festival. We got to be super careful with this. This is a town event, and yet we don't have much control there. So I'm hoping that we'll look at that. It's a fantastic event. Our staff is doing an incredible job. Great event, but there's room for improvement, so that's my concerns about that. Back to bylaw a little bit. I'm hoping that staff will consider adjusting the hours of bylaw. We've got a lot of wrongdoing that happens after 4:30, 5 o'clock, and these people know about it. I think we need to have staff on at the times when illegal activities are happening. I've seen it for myself. I sat there just this week, it was 4:30, and sure enough, that's the guy I was there with who was making the complaint. He says, "You watch, it's going to start here right about now." And sure enough, like clockwork, is when they come out. I think it's like a building inspector, or sometimes maybe you go to do something on the weekend when you know a safety inspector isn't around. Well, that's the same thing with a bylaw officer. We got to adjust. We got to do a better job. I'm attending a resident on Erie Street this week, where I've seen it happening all summer. They are providing food. It looks like they're taking money for food. Maybe alcohol's involved. Last week they had a spotlight going out into Erie Street trying to attract people off the road. So I got an invite to come this Thursday. That'll be about 7:30. I'll be down there. It's been happening all summer. It's not acceptable. And I haven't put in a city works complaint, but I will this Thursday. But I think we need to start thinking about how our bylaw enforcement is deployed, and we need to have them out there at during the hours when illegal activities are happening. Just like we started putting them out there on the weekends, we need them out there after 5 o'clock as well. That's what I got.
Deputy Mayor, did you have something as well?
Yes, Worthy Mayor, just the commenting on Councillor Dunn talking about taxes. I know that Brian is probably going to put something in the paper this week about the garbage situation, putting it out the night before, and also talking with some of the representatives from the Lakeshore Cardinals Racing. They're still averaging, last week was 39,000. So I just want to let you know it's be anywhere between 35 and 42,000 they're taking in on any given Sunday. It's every Sunday till the end of October. I'm still a winner. I'm still up. I just want to let you know that, and the other people that are hopefully are watching this across the other areas, that Leamington is still a hot track, and don't forget us.
Tomorrow also at 10:30 in the morning is polling for hospice. So it's the mayor of Kingsville, the mayor of Leamington, and the mayor of Essex polling off against each other. So don't bother showing up. But I wanted to put it out there. But it is for a good cause. So polling for hospice. That means walking with poles and trying not to fall down, walking fairly quickly through downtown Kingsville. Polling. So anyway, I think it should be kind of a fun event. So there's the three mayors polling off against each other. Should be a fun day. And then the lunch after. And at the same time, at noon, Essex Power Lines is donating, I believe it was $10 for every customer that went paperless. And they're donating that, $10 per customer, to Fighting Like Mason, or Fighting for Mason, the little boy that passed away from cancer. So I'm going there as the chair of Essex Power Lines. So we've got some, again, great things happening throughout our combined communities. So it's a wonderful time to live in Essex County and Leamington, isn't it? And with that, I'll entertain a motion to Councillor Dunn, Councillor Thiessen, all in favor, and that's carried. Thank you.